Author of the best-selling Girl with Seven Names, will be in conversation with Kelly Falconer, founder of the Asia Literary Agency. Can we please have a round of applause?
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us on this glorious day, the first day of the Hindu Literary Festival. We're delighted to be here, and I'm delighted now to introduce you to Hyeonseo Lee. The Girl with Seven Names is the title of her memoir. Hyeonseo is actually one of the authors I represent at the Asia Literary Agency. She was one of the first authors I brought on board to the agency. We met about in 2013 when I'd started the agency, and I had somebody ring me and say, "Hey, have you heard about this girl? She's done this TED Talk, and it's got 3 million hits, and she talks about her escape from North Korea." And because I knew a little bit about North Korea from a job that I had a long time ago, I thought, well, what's the story? So she's escaped, and how can we make a book out of this? And then, of course, I listened to her talk, and which has now gone on to have about 17 million hits so far, cross-posted to places like YouTube. So we very quickly put together a proposal and sold the rights at auction. Eventually it went to a publishing house called HarperCollins in the UK and the US, and it's since been published in about 22 languages around the world so far, and counting. We'd love to see it being translated into Hindi. Maybe that will come next. But so Hyeonseo and I know each other pretty well, and I don't know how many of you, can you raise your hands if you've seen the TED Talk, or if you've read the book?
Thank you.
Yeah. So Hyeonseo has a remarkable story. When she was about 17, before you went off to university, you just decided you lived very near the border with China, and your brother used to go back and forth sort of because he was working with the black market, as was your mother occasionally, as people do in those border towns. And before you went to university, you thought, well, I'm just going to cross the border and see, what it's like before I start school. People do it all the time. The river was frozen, and she had a nice dinner at home. Didn't tell her mom, and just said, "Oh, I'm just going to go see some friends tonight." And because you saw all the bright lights on the other side, I'll let you tell the story. And so she crossed the border over the frozen river, and they were very friendly with the border guards, who kind of let her pass. And she, went always thinking that she was going to come back. And then she got in a cab, it was a cab, right, and took you to your relatives, your distant relatives in China. It would turn out to be a very long drive away. You didn't realize at the time. And you rang your mum, and you'd been gone for a couple of days by that time. How long? A week. And her mother said, "You just cannot come back, because people know you're missing. You've put us all in danger. You've put yourself in danger." And her mother then had to go and find various ways to create some sort of subterfuge to pretend that her daughter was just visiting relatives, or was a missing child, and she had to report her as a missing child, etc., etc. So Hyeonseo, at the very tender age of 17, who didn't speak any Chinese, just sort of holed herself up in her relative's flat and taught yourself Chinese by watching cartoons and TV and studying, and then as the story goes on, I'll let her tell you, but as the story goes on, she lived in China for 10 years and really thrived there, but was always sort of on the run, sort of. She was always in hiding, in plain sight, because there are other North Korean defectors living, amongst the Chinese. And the Chinese government have this policy of finding sometimes, hunting out and finding North Korean defectors and repatriating them to North Korea, which means that they will either be hanged or shot or sent to a gulag, and their whole family are then also punished. So this is why, one of the reasons why we called this book The Girl with Seven Names, because she had to keep changing her identity. Eventually she defected, so to speak, to South Korea, and declared at the South Korean immigration that she was in fact not Chinese. Her Chinese was so good that they struggled to believe her, but she eventually said, they eventually believed that actually she was North Korean and that she was there to defect. And she just sort of flew in and then and then was in a kind of re-education camp, they say, and also in South Korea, and eventually settled there. But she missed her family so much. You hadn't seen your mother eventually for about 14 years, and your brother, and you felt, even though you were in contact with her sometimes by telephone, that had been smuggled in, you crafted a way to help her escape from North Korea. And this is what makes the story so powerful. Not only your strength in surviving so many years on your own, but the fact that you put your own life at risk again to go rescue your mother, and then eventually her brother had to go with them and leave everything that he knew behind at the last minute. And it's a very compelling story. And this is one of the bravest. You are the bravest person I have ever known. Thank you. But the other thing that makes Hyeonseo so brave is that she's a real advocate for human rights, not only in North Korea but especially in North Korea. And she's always, put herself basically in danger by constantly speaking, in public about the North Korean regime and the state of fear that they keep their people under, the state of deprivation the people live under, the way that in North Korea there are no human rights. And she's constantly campaigning and letting us all know about, what the situation is inside North Korea. It isn't the kind of bright and wonderful place that they want to make you believe when you go in as a tourist, which we are both very much against tourism to North Korea. And you can talk a little bit about that more later. But so this is another one of the things that makes you you're a very powerful advocate for change. And you always have said that you still feel that you are a North Korean, you love your country, you want to return to see all of your family and friends, and you are constantly hoping and praying and working towards reunification. So do you want to start about when you were a little girl, when you were looking over the border of China, what inspired you to cross the river that day? Do you remember that when you made the decision? How did it come about?
Until I was 17, I believed my country was the best in the world, because I was brainwashed for 17 years until the moment crossing the border into China, because the regime told us, especially our dear leader, the dictator, the first founder and the second dictator, said that the communism is a utopia, that we are living in utopia system. But outside of North Korea, like America or South Korea or Japan, many other countries are they are living in a disaster. People are dying there because they didn't have money to pay for hospital fees, so they are dying in front of hospital. And then they didn't have enough money to pay for tuitions for the school, so many students didn't even experience the schools, how it looked like. So in the textbook, what I learned, in the outside, especially South Korea, which South Korea is really one of the richest country in modern days. But I learned in the textbook that South Korean kids are starving, and then they're dying because Americans are colonizing South Korea, and then the Americans are executing South Korean people, and then they are just starving on the street, and then they were just dreaming to go to school. I learned that from textbook in North Korea throughout my school period. So that's why I was thinking, wow, I was so lucky being born in North Korea by having our dear leader, Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. If I was born in South Korea, I think I would have the same situation like what South Korean kids are in the textbook. That's why I was so proud of having our dear leader. And he was my God, I believed he didn't even go to the bathroom until I was 14. Because in 1994, our dear leader, he died. And then during his funeral, I realized maybe he's not God, because God couldn't die, but he died. So that was the very first moment that I realized maybe he's the same human being as me. But living in North Korea, on the same time, we were loyal to the government truly with my heart. I really loved our dear leader. But on the same time, with fear, because, we are not allowed to leave the country until today. The North Koreans are illegal to having passport. So we don't even know what's a visa, something. It's not legal for us to leave the country to the outside. And also, on the same time, we had to grow up with constant public executions, that people are dying, in front of mass people, hanging and just shooting right in front of their immediate family members.
So you always said that when you saw a public execution, you thought that maybe the people deserved to die because, and people do believe that.
Yeah, the regime told us that they are criminals. They're supposed to be killed. But it's really, many people were killed with many absurd reasons. For example, someone who escaped to China to feed their starving family, so they just brought 10 kilograms of rice from China. It's like they were begging from Chinese people, and then they brought their rice. Because of that, they were in a public execution. And then some people, who killed a cow, I think people will be shocked to hear somebody, after killing the cow, they were in public execution. But in North Korea, in the market, we are not easily to see the beef. It's illegal to sell beef in North Korea, literally, because the cow is considered, it's not belong to individuals, it's belong to government. So in North Korea, we don't have enough trucks or gas fuel for the farmers. So the cow does every work in the farm side. So it's really important. So it's belong to government, the cows. That's why during the famine, people are starving, and then some people killed the cow to feed, and then because of that, they were in a public execution. So what happened later, because if you kill a cow, you will be in public execution. So some people are cut off the cow tail. At least that has some meat. So they cut off the cow tails, then means you are not ended up in a public execution. So by eating the cow tails, some people are survived. And then what happened? The cows, after they cut off their tails, they couldn't have enough power to do the work. That moment I learned, for animals, the tails are really important for their strength. So for those people are killed in a public execution. And then during the public execution, nobody can cry for them or speak about them. If anyone to speak, on behalf of the criminals or victims, then that person would have been in a big problem. That's why during the public execution, they couldn't even breathe. Many people were super scared to watching the public execution. And the constant public executions are the reminder that I shouldn't do anything against our government. Otherwise, I will be killed exactly the person in front of me. And then during the public execution in North Korea, we have one rule that cannot change. Is at the very front line like this, everyone is standing, not they're sitting on the ceiling, but standing. So at the very front line, the immediate family and the relatives had to stand at the very front line and then to watch their beloved family members dying in front of them. So in the past, where I described in my book, in 1980s, we had hanging at the time. So I saw my first experience. The man was hanging by his neck under a bridge. And then somehow the regime changed later. They just stopped hanging people. That's too crucial, too cruel, they think. And then from early 1990s, they start having another executing, like of shootings, which until today we have. So in the past, at least they were shooting the victims like 9 bullets per person. 3 bullets here, 3 bullets here, 3 bullets here, like that. They were shooting. But as time goes by, right now, the current young dictator, Kim Jong-un, who's crazy, playing with the nuclear or missile things, he believed that right now it's more difficult to control people than in the past, because people are more and more are awakening right now by watching secretly like South-Korean dramas or pop song, K-pop or American movies. It's illegal still. They're secret watching it and addicted. So the Kim Jong-un thought having the bullet sound more bigger is make people more in a fear. So in the past we had 9 bullets kill 1 person, but right now I don't know, maybe 90 bullets. Depending on who you are, the whole body is exploded by bullet. So that's why people are, until the regime is still stable, controlling people in their country, where many people are still hard to understand why North Koreans are live like as modern day slaves until today, but because of that system. And
So you grew up in a fairly, so to speak, everything is relative, well-off household, right? Your mother she was making money on the black market. Your father had a job in the military, and you had food on the table. But you tell the story. I mean, not only about you being inspired to move to China because of the wool being removed from your eyes, as they say, but because of seeing the public execution and seeing Kim Il Sung die. But also you lived through the famine, and you saw people on the street, dead bodies, and you had a friend who you wanted to go to dinner at her house because she would come to your house for supper or for lunch. And one day you said, "Oh, why can't I go to your house for lunch?" And she was too embarrassed to tell you why.
well, the story is a very common story in North Korea during the famine. The famine started from 1994 until early 2000s, which is until today initially, but the famine killed like more than up to 1 million to 3 million people. So because of the famine, the North Korean people started awakening from that situation. Until then, they didn't thought the money is important, because we were received by the regime like rice, the distribution, which is not enough. We were always sort of a little bit starving, the ordinary people, but my family was lucky because of my father's the status. We were provided everything, but I'm talking about the public opinion. So during the famine, I didn't know until they see the people are dying on the street. I really thought people are dying in the movies or during the war period. That's what I believed until I see the reality in my country. So one day I visited my friend's home during lunchtime after school, and then whenever she came to my home, my mom gave her a lot of nice meals. But that was the very first time and the last time I visited her home, finally. And then it was already afternoon, 1 p.m., but their family didn't bring me any food. And I thought they were very stingy. They didn't want to share food with me. I was super, at the time, annoyed by that. And then my friend realized, she saw that I was angry at the time. So she reluctantly took me her family's kitchen, and then she just opened the rice cooker pot cap. And then she didn't open the whole pot, only she opened it like this much. And then she said, because we don't have normal food, because you have like only this food. That's why I can't feed, I can't, give you. So she hoped I understand the situation. So when I look at the inside the pot, I still don't know. I still don't know what was the inside. But something was very dark and then very thick. So I think it's like a corn stick. That's the boiled
corn
in
cob or something, yeah.
That's what I think still. Because many years I still was thinking, what was that food inside? And then that was the very first moment I realized people are suffering. And then as I said in my TED talk, that the death letter that my mom brought from her company, that 5 family members were dying. They were waiting to die on the floor in their house because they didn't eat food for many days. So from the letter, I realized that people, right before they were dying, their bodies are so emaciated. It's so big, not because of the getting fat. It's because of the condition situation. So that was really shocking. So during that time,
So what happened? So somebody sent a letter to your mother. One of her family members sent a letter to your mother saying, "We're starving. We are going to die. I dream of my last meal. I wish what they were dreaming of was food. They dreamed of eating." And your mother read it, and then you read it.
she said in the letter, by the time when you read this letter, our 5 family members will not exist in this world. And then at the end, she said, before I die, my dream is to eat the corn cake as much as I can. That was the last sentence. And then I was super shocked at the time because corn cake in North Korea, it's not even rice cake. It's corn cake in North Korea. It's the cheapest food in North Korea. And then her last dream is to eat that. I mean, I was thinking my last dream, before I die, I was thinking maybe I want to meet my mom or meet somebody who I miss. That should be the last dream, but not the cheap food. So ever since that, I started beginning to see that people are dying on the street. So it was like around 1997, 6 to 7. So we have many dead bodies on the street. So especially we go under the bridge because the people are lying under the bridge where they could easily hide and that they were dying there or just near the train station. We could easily see those dead bodies, and sometimes the bodies weren't removed. So the smell of decomposing flesh were everywhere and making people were scared, whoever passing by. And that's why, because my home is right next to the border with China, then we have Chinese visitors every day to my city. And for North Korean regime, it would look shameful for the Chinese people that if we don't remove those dead bodies. So at the time, a certain man's job is to get rid of those bodies. And then they just used hand carts at the time. And then they stacked the dead bodies in pile. And then they just get rid of it. And then one time I saw there's a man near the market who didn't die yet. He was breathing. He didn't die yet. But those people put him among the dead bodies and then just to get rid of him. Because I also know that the person has no hope. He would die very soon. So that was the reality inside North Korea. And then because of the famine, it changed my mind, not completely, but a lot. Because I was living the border between China. And then I saw completely 2 different worlds. When I witnessed my country, one eye when I saw my country, it's the darkness of my hometown. And the other side, which is China, the brilliant new world in China, it looked so different. It's so colorful. Why are people dying here in this side, and then while we are suffering every night without having any light, just completely black, the whole country, every night. But the other side, I feel like every night it's like neon signs. It's like different world. And then people are singing there, dancing there, right next to the border, the river, like they were on a picnic with the speakers, just like they were wearing very colorful clothes like you have. That's why I was very stunned which one is true. That's why I was thinking to find out the answer, I just secretly crossed the border. But I didn't mean to, at the time, escape my country completely, because I couldn't imagine being separated from my family, that who I loved the most in my whole life. I was thinking just to find out the truth. Only I have to visit China, and then I have to see with my own eyes, and I had to come back. And then the crossing the border, it was completely changed my life, the moment, and that was like last minute with my home country, and I had to be separated from my family for so long. And the brilliant new world that I believed, it's not actually for me. It's I actually had to avoid in that society, and then I suffered for nearly 11 years in China.
So we were going to call the book initially, or we could have mooted the idea of calling the book "The Girl in the Red Shoes," because it is there are lots of parallels with like the Wizard of Oz. So your mother had bought you this lovely pair of red shoes that you put on that fateful night to walk across the river. I mean, totally inappropriate shoes, but you wanted to get dressed up and go. So all these things were happening to you throughout your life, and you're a very intelligent woman, and you decided, as you said, to investigate and you questioned everything that you had been taught. So you walked across from the darkness into the so-called light, from black and white into Technicolor with your red shoes on, and so what did your brother ever talk to you about what he saw in China, or your mother? Did you ever ask them, or it was too dangerous for them to tell you?
Not the reason the system completely under control those people, or the information from outside that completely can prevent until today, was the fear again. Because like my father, who was visiting China several times, which is not usual situation as a North Korean citizen, but because of his job status, he was privileged to go abroad for business trip for the regime. And then whenever he returns to North Korea, on the border side of the immigration in North Korea, which I learned that many years after, they had to sign the paper that in North Korea he shouldn't reveal any words, any information what he saw from the outside. Like, in the statement, it didn't say if after you say that what's gonna happen to you. But as North Korean citizen people, we know automatically if you reveal something that you shouldn't, then we know that the end is public execution or sent to political prison camp, where we have so many camps until today that by saying something, those wrong information, wrong things, that not only killing yourself, but whole entire family would have been disappeared in the middle of the night, and then they were just forcibly sent to political prison camp. So it happens until today. That's why people are super scared to, even what they see, what they heard, they couldn't tell other people, because the system is completely destroyed the trust between people. Like, we have to criticize all friends, neighbors, classmates, and then we have to spy on each other. And we have many informants paid by the government until today. That's why we just to not being sent to political prison camp. What we hear, what we see, we couldn't share to anyone. Even sometimes between husband and wives, they couldn't even trust each other, because, like, if after they divorce, for example, one person could tell to the government about the other person's behavior. So at the time, I was thinking, the only human being I could trust in North Korea is my mom, my father, my brother. That was all who I can trust. That's why even the government officials, like my father, they couldn't reveal what they see from the outside. And then we all hear the fake information through the North Korean TV, which we only have one TV channels until today, all filled with the propaganda. So the entire time, even my mom's generation, they all believed that was true.
So by the time you left Korea, your father had died. So you were leaving behind your mother and your brother. And when you showed up at your relative's door in China, what did they say? Because there was no phone call beforehand, there was no letter. You just sort of knocked on their door. And this chap whose flat you went to, he had actually visited you in North Korea. And again, he couldn't tell you, what was going on in the outside world outside. So, but when you got there, didn't he go, "Oh my God, let me tell you"? And so he started to educate you.
My uncle, with long distance relatives, that he visited North Korea twice in the past because he had relatives in North Korea. Then whenever he visited North Korea when I was young, I asked him several times what it looked like China, what it looked like outside. And then he just didn't say anything, just trying to avoid my questions. So at the time, I thought he doesn't like me. That's why he didn't want to talk to me. But after 17 years after when I arrived in his home in China, the very first moment when I arrived at his home, his character was completely changed. He just began to tell me every truth that he never said that in North Korea. Because he said, "Do you know you're a dictator?" That was the first moment I heard the dictator, the vocabulary in my life. Your dictator, Kim Il-sung, how something, etc. And then your second dictator, his son, Kim Jong-il, is how horrible. And then he even killed his own father, the first founder of the dictator in my country. When I heard that, I thought he was crazy. And then at the time, I said to him, "How dare you can call our dear leader's name without putting any, respectable titles, just to Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il." I feel so ridiculous to hear that because as a North Korean citizen, until today, we can't call the dictator's name just to itself. Then means I will be in public execution. But we can't imagine even we can call in that way. Or also in North Korea, we don't have the second person, the name as our dictator. So someone who had the same name as our dictator, they were forcibly to change the name. And then until today, it's illegal to having the folding newspapers in North Korea. Because always at the front page, the main page is always our dear leader, he appears on the newspaper. So even foreigners, whoever visiting North Korea today, it's illegal for them to folding the newspaper because our dear leader's face will be folded. That's considered, it's not respectable. So in that situation when my uncle told me everything, I couldn't believe that was all true. I thought he was lying. But one thing because I have eyes, I could see the buildings, the high skyscraper buildings on the street. It's like it's a dream city where I never witnessed in my life. Somehow that told me that I was living in a kind of virtual prison that's not, completely normal society. Because of the economic gap, it was over time, it changed my mind quite pretty fast.
So, and there's so much to, Hyeonseo could sit here for hours and hours and, tell you, about the situation in North Korea. There's still, the country is still experiencing a state of famine. People are still dying outside of Seoul. You tell the story of the games, the mass games that people go. You always see photographs of the cards that are flipped and things. And she said that as a child they had no recreation after school. They just had to practice for the mass games and practice and practice and practice. And if you're in the mass games and if you have to use the loo, you cannot, because that would mess up the cards. So people would pee in their pants basically or whatever, because they were not allowed to leave. And so the regime not only brainwashed them, but they really forced them into they are sort of enslaved to what the state wants them to do. So, and if you go as a tourist to North Korea, the North Korean regime uses that as evidence to its people to say, look how great we are. Everybody wants to come visit us. So tourism reinforces the regime's, one of the regime's sort of mantras. But look, I thought we only have 15 minutes to go, and I thought we might take it open to the audience, and have them ask you some questions, because we always get some really interesting questions from the audience. Should we do that now? Are we going to pass a mic around? Do you have a mic? Do you have a mic? Okay, we have one question here from the front.
How does it feel to relive your experience and talk about it constantly? You're having to live in the past in a way. How does that feel?
I mean, personally, to me, it's not really a happy thing, because especially after I write my book, which it was published it's 2 years ago, and then it's getting a lot of attention around the world. So I have to talk about this book or my story or speeches around the world. It became like literally my job right now. I have to tell every moment, literally. And then from beginning, I was thinking it's good to tell the world that the truth about North Korea. This is in the hope that the horrible tyranny affects my homeland will end. So I had that responsibility. I have to do that, keep continuing. I have to do it. But on the same time, I found out that myself, I'm in a somehow depression, which I never knew about the depression in the past. I couldn't understand that people are dying in depression. I was blamed those people in the past. I said, they have too much. That's why they even have a time to feel depressed. I was thinking, because I didn't have enough time. Always I had to survive, had to do everything myself. So I didn't have enough time to depress myself. But after publishing my book, somehow I realized later, I was crying myself sometimes, even in my room myself. There's nobody there, but sometimes I'm crying myself. And sometimes when I'm giving my speeches, I feel like I wanted to cry. So later I found out the answer. This is kind of depressing for me, because I can't avoid with the past right now. It's like keep telling me that you're like a victim. I have to live with my book, the story every day, which I don't want to think about that every time. Actually, it's not a really good memories, many things. I want to live just the future or forward, not the backward. But because of this book, just to keep reminding, that's why it's another difficulties that I have today. But I'm still feel thankful that my story could hurt around the world, and then to tell the people about the truth in North Korea.
That was a really good question.
Thank you.
Hyeonseo always says that your story is one of many, and your voice. You speak English, unlike a lot of others, more now. But your English is very good, and you say that your story is one of many, thousands and hundreds of thousands of others, and you have said that you feel a responsibility to continue to talk about it. Okay, should we have another question?
What do you think is the future of your country? Are you hopeful of it?
That's one of the most common questions, especially these days. The situations between America and North Korea, is we are having very intense situation politically. Of course, my dream is having unification, two countries, but because we were separated more than 7 decades right now. But sometimes I'm very scared that we will be separated like 100 years. Because by this time, because we were separated so long, so the people living in South Korea and North Korea, they're just ideologically, it's so different right now. Every system, it's like completely we became like a nobody each other. Especially South Korean people's perspective that because of the hugely different economic gaps, the people in South Korea, they didn't want to have a unification. And the people in North Korea are so brainwashed. They're the most brainwashed people on this planet until today. So even after unification, I don't know, there will be huge chaos. That how could we get along very together? So, which many people are even talking today that maybe it's good to the system keep like Hong Kong and China, you know, one policy but two different countries in that situation. So, but what I'm thinking right now, because of our current young dictator, he's crazy. I mean, he's not crazy actually. He's very smart. He's an unpredictable dictator. So, but on the same time, I think Trump is also, I mean, he's more, I'm had to worry about Trump more than my dictator right now. So I think America is ready to do something serious. It's not a joke. And then if North Korea, they did too much. And then if they do a little bit more, then America really gonna do something to North Korea. And that's my dream actually. So I was thinking, within 5 years, seriously, the unification is come very close. Either unification or the regime changes, the collapse in North Korea, whatever. The changes, it's came very close. It's not like, so I was thinking, these days, especially like, I have to prepare for the day we have unification. So it's very close right now. Thank you.
I recently saw a movie about, in the film fest, about this North Korean fisherman straying into the South Korean waters. And when they try to give him asylum and they want to show him South Korea, he says, no, 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 I won't see anything, I will not see anything. So is there a lot of brainwashing going on there?
Yeah. The fishermen, right? Every month we are facing the issues in South Korea. Either the fishing boat was just floating automatically, either came to South Korea or Japan. But many of fishing boats came on purpose to trying to seeking asylum. But some fishing boats, the North Koreans fishermen, they say that publicly because because it's too public. When they arrived in South Korea, it was on the media all the time, the issues. And then they were concerned about their family members back in North Korea. It's because they were not intentionally escape the country. That means that all family members left in North Korea. And then because of the issue, of course he's a human being, that he wanted to live in a all divided country. But because of his behavior, the left family members in North Korea, they will be all killed, will be sent to political prison camp. That's why he just gave up his life and then just publicly say, I want to return to our dear leaders, embrace. He had to say that. Otherwise, after he returned to North Korea, he will be killed. Even if he returned to North Korea, the regime will be, because he saw the truth in South Korea. So he is not safer for North Korean regime situation. He was be sent to prisons there. That's why to survive in North Korea, he had to say something very nice for the regime.
So information is controlled a lot in North Korea, right? Which means education itself can't be as liberal as it is in other countries. Which begs me to ask the question, what sort of education are you imparted in North Korea at the school and at a higher secondary or at a collegiate level?
In North Korea, we have every curriculum like what you have today. It's all, I think it's pretty much similar. But the difference is, like in the outside, South Korea today, many people speak English. English is a really important subject, or mathematics, or like playing piano. Those things are very important. But in North Korea, what's really important for us is we have a specific textbook that our dear leader's name. We have two dictators, not the current one, the other two dictators, like their history books, their activity books. It's like a Bible. It's a huge book throughout the whole school period. So whoever memorized the fake history, which I didn't know that was fake, that considered the genius. So in my school principal, she said, I'm genius. In front of so many students. I was really proud at the time. But now I feel I was so stupid because I was wasting my time memorizing all their fake, histories, fake activities. I was so brainwashed.
but in North Korea, we also have like languages, other foreign languages. Like they are teaching Russians and English, but which is not really important. Like my brother one time, he asked his teacher, because he hate learn English at the time. And then he couldn't understand why we have to learn the enemy languages in North Korea, where there's no way to use the language in North Korea. So one day he asked his teacher, I don't understand why we are learning our enemy language, the American language, because Americans are all primary enemies until today. And then the teacher, I think she's really smart. She just, in a short time, she answered with a very brilliant answer. She said, no, we are not learning American languages. We are learning British English. So even that, we don't consider that's important because no way to use it. So that was the curriculum system in North Korea. But besides that, North Korean kids, we are free labor, the most unpaid free labor in North Korea, because under the name of students, many times we had to skip the classes, and then we had to do everything what regime told us to do, like a mass game. You guys saw on the mass game in Pyongyang, right? We had to spend years without even, just taking break to show our loyalty to our government. Or just the farmers. There's not enough farmers to work on a farm. So students, we were sent to the farm, and we had to help the farmers like monthly there. Or when America and when North Korea has a very bad political situation, the regime told us that this time the America will attack with the nuclear, so we had to hide under the ground as deeper as possible. So all the students, we had to skip classes, and then we had to dig the ground, make tunnels for years. We have many tunnels in North Korea, and they are very good at making tunnels because to hide under the ground. So every hard work in North Korea, the students we did, like elementary school, middle school, high school, and even university students, they did all the hard work.
Okay, I think we've run out of time. I know we have other questions still, but you're going to have to buy the book, which is for sale here. Watch Hyeonseo's TED Talk. Follow her Facebook pages. You're very good with your social media. But she'd be happy to have a chat with you, a quick chat when you at the book signing. Thank you so much for coming, and please raise a hand for Ms. Hyeonseo Lee.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.